Matt Doocey, Member of Parliament for the Waimakariri District, thanks for coming in. You're here to discuss World Suicide Prevention Day. You've had a wee bit to do with this in Parliament recently, and a report is being delivered today. Is that right?
That's correct, Kerry. Good morning. Thanks for allowing me to come on the show today to talk about this very important issue, I believe.
Absolutely, it is an important issue. It's been an important issue for a long, long time. Is it fair to say that people are now starting to discuss it more now?
I believe so. And for me, part of this debate now is driven by young people. Young people have a vocabulary to talk about mental health that we never did. They face less stigma and they're more open to talking about their own mental health and their own mental health needs. So they're very much driving politicians forward, and I welcome that. But also to your point, I hosted a public meeting with Paul Lynch. Many will know Paul. He's written a book about suicide, the suicide of his brother. And we held that meeting last year in the Rangiora Town Hall. And I was struck by the amount of people who turned up but then voiced their own experience of being bereaved by suicide. And I would say that there's probably not many people in New Zealand who haven't been touched by someone close to them who has taken their own life.
Absolutely, and hands up here. The World Suicide Prevention Day, it's an international thing. You have released a report, or is that the correct terminology, that you've come up with a report, a CrossParty report, to go through this subject, like how big the problem is, how big in New Zealand is this particular problem statistically wise?
Well, the provisional statistics were recently released, and unfortunately in the last year 654 New Zealanders took their own life. So this is an important issue, I believe, for New Zealand, and that's why for the cross-party mental health group in Parliament, now this is the first time Parliament has attempted a cross-party approach for mental health, and we believe that when we looked at the priorities, suicide prevention should be number one, and that's why we've focused on this report. But what we're very clear about in the cross-party group, now that involves myself from National, Lewissa Wool from Labour, Chloe Schwarbrick from the Greens, David Seymour from ACT, and Jenny Marcroft from New Zealand First. So it has a representative from each current political party. Now, we just don't want to commission a report that sits on a shelf. We want to say that when we produce a report, we are going to have buy-in from all political parties. So then whoever forms the government of the day, we're agreeing a direction of travel. Because basically what we want to do is develop long-term policy solutions longer than the 3-year parliamentary cycle. Because we believe, and linking back to what I said before about young people driving us forward, people don't want us to take a partisan approach around mental health. They want us to work together in Parliament and play our part.
1737 is a number that you might want to take note of as well. 1737, it's a free call on your cell phone, or send a text to that number there if you feel the need to as well. What can we, the public, do about this issue? Is there any sort of, apart from putting pressure on the politicians, is there something that we as a family, a community can do about this particular issue?
Yeah, I think there is. There's a role for government, clearly, for Parliament. There's a role for communities and individuals and families. And I think it sounds simple, but there is an ability for everyone just to take time to listen and to reach out people that are close to them. What we do know in a time of COVID-19 and the impacts of that, there is huge distress in our families and our communities. And I think if we are able to connect with the people around us and take time and listen to them and care for them, that will go a long way. Because what we need to remind ourselves, and that's what World Suicide Prevention Day is about, and that is the focus of this report, that all suicides are preventable. So we have taken a very bold stance in this first report. It's called Zero Suicides Aotearoa. It is visionary, but we believe that all suicides are preventable, and by taking an approach not only in Parliament but through our community, we can prevent suicide.
Where can we see a copy of this report? Is it available to the public?
That's right. So it's going to be launched at 9 a.m. today. I can send you the link, Kerry, and you could put that up on the Compass website. Equally, I can put it up on my my social media and website channels as well. And basically what we're saying for the government of the day and for Parliament is that by getting a cross-party buy-in to a national suicide prevention plan, the international evidence shows that you can greatly reduce suicide in your country. And that plan needs to take what's called a multi-sectorial approach, because it's not one size fits all. So what will support suicide prevention for young people in Auckland is very different than what will prevent suicide in our farming communities in North Canterbury.
Do you think that the rural community in North Canterbury is of particular concern?
I think so. And when you look at the recent data from the Ministry of Health, thankfully urban suicide in New Zealand has reduced by 7%, but unfortunately rural suicide in New Zealand has increased by 17%. And for me, being a representative of a rural electorate, I was very keen for our rural communities to be a focus in this report, and it is. And one interesting statistic stayed with me when the researcher presented this report back to us, was that when you look at suicide in our rural communities, a large percentage of those individuals have never engaged a health service. So why that's important is that a government of the day could spend a lot of money investing into life-saving suicide prevention work and health services, but if they're not engaging the individuals in the first place, it's not the most effective. So then we start to say, who is? And as we know, farmers like talking to farmers, rural communities like talking to rural communities. So we say, let's take a different approach. Let's resource our rural support trust and run programs on the farm so they can connect with the people that they need to connect with.
With the Rural Support Trust here in North Canterbury, we have a strong association with them, and if you're helping them get the message out across Compass, I'm very much appreciative of that, Matt. 0 is the target. Is that achievable?
Well, I think it comes back to that founding principle that all suicides are preventable. Some might say, well, can you go from 654 to 0? Well, that will take a lot of work. Some would argue, should we have a target first? Unfortunately, when you start saying things like a target, then you are implying there's a certain level of suicide which is acceptable. And I don't accept that, and I don't think New Zealanders should as well. On saying that, a target could be a first step, but equally, I think the focus should be on 0. If I could throw a question back to you, it'd be almost like saying, should we accept that people dying from cancer is acceptable? No.
Obviously, no.
We work hard at it.
Absolutely.
We fund research and we fund best practice care to address cancer.
And another thing that you could say is the road toll. There's a lot of resources thrown at the road toll and trying to get it down. And in fact, just off the top of my head, it's suicide in New Zealand is probably double what the road toll is in New Zealand, and there's hundreds of millions of dollars spent on that.
That's exactly right. And in fact, that is one of the statistics in the executive summary of this report. And you're right, Kerry, it is double the road toll. So what this report seeks to do is to say, well, actually, if we look in a detailed level at what works at different sectors of New Zealand society, then how can we have that continuous quality improvement process where what we do is find out what works and then resource it and make sure it scales up to support a bigger number of people.
Matt Doocey, thanks for coming into Compass FM. Really appreciate this. When's the report being released?
9 a.m. today.
And you're going to send us a link that we can put on our webpage and Facebook?
That's right.
Absolutely brilliant. 1737 is the number that you want to keep handy. You know, if you every now and again we all go through some tough times, but that number there, 1737, just make contact if you feel the need, or if you know someone in your family that may need to have some of that support. Matt Doocey, thanks for coming into Compass. We'll keep in contact with you over this particular issue.
Thank you, Kerry.
Wonderful. Compass FM.